G'day, this is the Passive House Show with my good friend Paul Keeley, owner and CEO, founder of Eco-Built Passive Homes. This podcast is brought to you by Eco-Built Passive Homes, by the way. My name is Mikhail Laxton. We are joined by a Passive House homeowner. Paul, tell us a bit more about him.
John Wiebe, exactly. John, thanks for joining us here. You had started approximately 2 years ago. Is that correct? On your Passive House home building adventure, we'll call it?
Yeah, I would say we probably broke ground 2 years. Well, yeah, poured the foundation probably 2 years ago today.
That's great. So, I usually like to find out, and, a reminder for everyone, this is educational, bringing experiences to your living room, to your vehicle, wherever you are today, bringing Passive House experiences into your world, and hopefully providing some great examples of different things to think about on your home building journeys. And, John, with respect to your journey, where did it all start?
I think it started with us, my wife and I, living in a century farmhouse that was really cold, really drafty, lovely, but I would call it the opposite of a passive house. I mean, it was the kind of place where we'd have to keep the wood stove cranked. You'd also have to keep the furnace on part of the time. In addition, socks and slippers were a must. And sometimes the windows would ice up. So you get all the things that you don't want in a house. And we had it in spades. So that's kind of where it started. We, being in building, being in carpentry, we kind of had our eye. I always had my eye on doing something for ourselves. And we didn't really know what, and we didn't really know where. But we certainly thought that something with a nice expanse, something where we could get a view, would be really crucial. And so we just started there. And the passive house idea certainly took hold quite early. Like, we really recognized the value in it. We really understood the idea that the upfront cost, the investment in a really solid envelope, windows, doors, air tightness, that would really be the key to in a way hedging inflation, hedging against the inflation of energy, because no matter what, you're going to have to keep up with energy costs. So if you make your investment up front, we figured that's a one-time cost, and the amount of supplemental energy will be drastically reduced as we go. So we tried to think, what's it going to be like in our 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s? As nice as it is to have a wood stove with lots of firewood and keeping your place warm with it, do I want to do that? Do I want to do 10 cords every year for the next 30, 40 years, right? So we kind of tried to imagine, how do we lessen our impact? How do we lessen the amount of just inputs, and to create a better home? And so that's what led us to that passive house, realizing that was the key. That was the answer. And we found you online. There were a few people online that we kind of reached out to and kind of just felt around to see what our options could be. And I don't know if you recall, but it was pre-pandemic, and I just sent you off a sketch saying, just for kicks, how much would this cost, right? Like, could you cost this type of building? And I remember you got back to us right away, and it was quite detailed, and we were really impressed. And then with the pandemic and everything that kind of came about, we just, like so many people, put everything kind of on ice and just took a breather and thought, well, let's not make any sudden moves, because we just don't know. And then as things started to clear up, and we realized that it's doable. We've got the piece of land that we've always wanted. That's when we reached back to you and kind of got the process going.
So purchasing the land was that the first step or the first goal in your design build overall project, or was choosing what type of house to build, or a combination of the two?
Well, once we were starting to look for land, we kind of knew that a nice south-facing view, a nice open sort of private south-facing view, was going to be key to that parcel. knowing that no matter what style of house or however it comes to be, that's going to be pretty key, keeping that south face open. We looked at a piece of land not far from where we are now. It was great. It was 25 acres. It had these nice kind of gentle rolling hills and a bit of forest. But it was the entire energy of the property was facing north. So that it kind of sloped downwards towards the north. The driveway was at that end of the property. And so you kind of felt if you were going to build here, you'd probably have to build on this, north, it's facing it north. And that was a deal breaker. And the real estate agent kind of looked at us like, what, like, I don't understand. This is a great parcel. It's just what you asked for. And we said, no, it faces north. And off we went. The journey continued. And then we landed on the parcel we're on now. It's kind of more than we ever sort of dreamed of. So,
and it's quite cool. And it's quite far north, right? Considering Ontario in general is where you've built. Is it considered Northern Ontario, true Northern Ontario, or it is?
It is. Yeah. So we're about 45 minutes north of that kind of line, the unofficial line of Muskoka, right? That's kind of the where they consider it Southern Ontario. But yeah, so we're in the north, you'd say.
So a great example for passive. And listening to you talk about the energy efficiency and the low energy aspect of passive home with your preliminary research, do you remember what your expectations were?
Yeah, I'm the kind of the going talk is sort of anywhere from 70 to 90% reduction in your energy use. And anywhere as we started on the journey, I kind of thought, boy, I mean, I'll take 50, I'll take 40, I'm game for any savings. But as soon as we started to look closer at and using my construction knowledge kind of as a guide, looking at what the R values would be in the final construction, going through that process, looking at the R value or U values of the windows and doors, and looking at how these components are constructed and the different level of just the level of workmanship and quality that goes into these components. Understanding that the air system has to be, hermetically sealed. There's no dryer vents, for example. All these kinds of traditional elements you would put in a house, a hose bib just punched through the wall. All those kind of those pretty standard aspects were eliminated. And so once I started to see that you would really treat that envelope with such care and such precision. Then I started to really understand, this is where the rubber's really going to hit the road. So it was kind of like, as you research passive house, you start to research all the things that go into it, all the elements that are kind of key to hitting those markers of efficiency. And once you start looking closely at, and when you feel in your hands, like you open one of these windows and look at the gasketing and the locking mechanisms, you start to really appreciate the difference that cumulatively they all make. And so, and the slab is no different. I mean, when, our slab is sitting on 15 inches of foam beneath, underfoot, 16 inches to the edge of our thickened edge. So, when you realize what that R value is, and you realize how, like, I think about how cold our cement floor was in our old basement, for example, and you realize how thermally broken you are there and how isolated you are and how much control you've got over the air in and out. That's when I was absolutely certain that the gains are going to be huge, the savings are going to be huge, and it's going to be worth doing. And knowing that I was going to do basically the bulk of the work myself, I knew that I would have total control over the quality of the installation, and the taping and the assembly. So just making sure that all those little nooks and crannies and all those joints and everything's done as it's supposed to be. And I knew nothing was going to get missed, taking the sort of build in hand. We deliberately kept the building quite simple. We do have a dormer, and there's a photo I sent you of and well, I mean, you designed it for us, but we did put a dormer in, which is a bit of a trick to make sure that envelope stays consistent. But other than that, it's quite a simple rectangle. And we did that on purpose, and there's beauty in simplicity, I would say.
It's good to hear you describe the shell a little bit too there, John. Then to put that into perspective for everyone, and when John was describing the thermal bridge around the outside of the concrete slab, the house that we're talking about here is ultimately a slab on grade. There's 16 inches of styrofoam on the outside of the slab. With respect to code, the only thermal bridge requirement or thermal protection for the edge of that slab is 2 inches of styrofoam. So ultimately an additional 14 inches of styrofoam. So it really is part of the integral part of or proof in this detail that the home truly is built like a thermos, and reason why inside temperatures can remain for a long period of time in super cold winters in Northern Ontario without much energy inputs.